Hello, welcome to Calumet Roundtable, brought to you from Purdue Calumet, a student-produced interviewing show with scholars and researchers from the area. I am your host, Lee Artz. I'm joined by my guest today, Dr. Evelyn Bottando. She's from Merrillville, Indiana, and importantly for all of our viewers, she is a graduate of Purdue Calumet's master's program. Got your PhD at Iowa. Which I encouraged her to do, by the way. I thought that we would start by talking about your dissertation. Not many people get to start talking about their dissertation, but I think it fits with our topic today. We're going to talk about selfies, digital media literacy. So your dissertation, I understand, was broadly addressing the question of Google and how Google was digitalizing, it's a hard word, digitalizing libraries. And I just wondered, I was not aware of that, and I thought you might share with me what you found.
Well, when I started here at Purdue University Calumet, I had a really good foundation in a concern for media and the public interest. But it was the degree at University of Iowa that helped hone my interest, that I was concerned that the internet that we have today is starting to foreclose ideas and other options for how it could be, a more commercialized internet, for example. The Google Books phenomena, I guess I'll just call it that for lack of a better term, it was a time where library funding at the academic level had been consistently cut. And in fact, we've experienced what's called neoliberalism, consistent cutting back of public resources, yes, and libraries especially, which are essential to democracy. Google made an offer that's very difficult for any library to refuse, including private libraries like Harvard. And their offer was to digitize at no cost for the digitization. And what I found is that a large company like Google could afford to make that offer and afford to take on the look, the aesthetic of doing public interest work. However, their contracts foreclosed other options, such as places like the Internet Archive, which is headed by Brewster Kahle. And Brewster Kahle made his money from being an internet entrepreneur in the early days. However, he moved on to do public benefit work, where they offer to anyone online a space where you can access those types of resources that are in the public domain. Like books that were made before 1920. Volunteers work there as well as people in the nonprofit community. So they're very efficient to make sure there's server space for videos, songs.
So I can go online at the Internet Archive and type in the book I want as long as it was published before 1920.
Yes.
And that book's going to pop up in some PDF and I'm free to use it.
And this group also advocates to make sure that information is available in the public domain, whereas a company like Google will skirt the issue. The title of the dissertation was called Hedging the Commons for a reason, because a company like Google will be able to take on the aesthetic, the guise of working in the public interest. And in fact, much of their work does benefit the public interest. However, it becomes a hedge on the commons, the common resources that are available to artists, to students like in this program here, so they can have free access to materials they need to produce their work.
So how is the Google, I'm assuming they have an online site. Mm-hmm. I can go to the online site, I can download the book? No.
Well, it's fantastic because this relationship that Google established with academic libraries and other public libraries, what happened is that it contributed to the creation of Google Play, which is their Android marketplace. So now you can still go to books.google.com, but it is and you'll have access to 20% of a book. And those books were taken from libraries and scanned and digitized by Google. But it also interconnects with their marketplace for selling books and selling other media.
So I don't actually get the book. I get 20% of the book?
Yes.
How is that in the, I don't understand how that's in the public interest. Why does that mean if I'm at the university in the library, I have access because I'm at the university, but people outside don't have access? I'm confused.
It's an excellent question because my answer is sometimes. because depending upon which lawyers were available at different academic institutions, those lawyers negotiated better contracts at different libraries. So Michigan.
So I'm at a public university.
Yes.
I'm at Michigan, a public university.
Right.
I want to get a book out of the library.
Yes.
I go to this website, and I can get 20% of the book, but I can't get more of the book.
In Michigan, you can get more because they are working to make sure more of the PDF is accessible.
Okay.
Because to help students with visual disabilities. Again, it was a case-by-case basis depending upon how the different libraries negotiated.
So how would I ever get the entire book outside of going to the library to get the book? Say I wanted the entire book and I wanted to download it. Do I have to pay a premium or pay for the book like I'm buying an ebook?
I promised no snark today, but there's always piracy. No, I mean, much of this is the question of those books that are out of print but are still potentially under copyright.
Right.
We're in a gray area. The library can't fully make a PDF version of that available anyway. However, in the benefit, so speaking on behalf of Google and saying something good here, is that yes, it helped give libraries like University of Michigan's library resources to improve access for those with visual impairments. But you can still check out the book. The books are not gone. The physical book is still there. But in terms of all the digitizing, that was something that Google got a copy of and helps contribute to their Google Play marketplace. The library got a copy of, and they got expanded
but
access.
The library doesn't have access to it on their own? They still have to
The library can't display it on their own because of restrictions by copyright.
Okay. I don't know. It doesn't seem to me that the library got a lot out of it. It was nice that Google says we'll digitize all this, but if you don't have access to the digital copy, it's like, why do I want a digital copy that I can't have access to anyway? And Google's long-range intent is to sell access to that digital copy?
Well, Google is a funny company in that the way
it even sounds funny. Google.
It is, and in fact, it's not even Google anymore. It's Alphabet Company,
yes.
Alphabet Corporation, pardon. But in that the way they characterize their work is to play on that middle ground of public benefit, but they're not public,
yes.
right? Google Fiber works this way, which is another program. It's going to cost people money to get on Google Fiber in Kansas City, where they're a Google Fiber city, but they'll have speedier access to the internet. However, it does come at a cost. So Google will make an investment in places that maybe others haven't made investments. And the library was a space where they did provide something to the academic libraries, but I would say they got a lot in return in terms of that their business model depends on data and having access to a lot of data.
Well, they control the data at this point. I mean, it doesn't.
I don't know. AT&T's
the library may have the book, but Google has the actual digital copy of the book. They're in control of that.
The library has a digital copy as well,
but they can't use it, and they can't share it, and they can't make it accessible to anybody that wants it.
Copyright.
Yes, right.
But I will say this, going back to the program here at Purdue Calumet and a few things that we learned, and a topic that I know you love and that the students love as well, right? It's a great example of hegemony, of cultural hegemony, because we see that Google is very large, but I wouldn't be able to, it would be a problem for me to be so absolutist about them controlling all of the data, especially since we know now that AT&T is getting in the mix locally.
Yes.
They've decided to run fiber optic cable in the Gary and Northwest Indiana region. What are they doing? They're making sure that Google is not the only hegemon or big company doing this work, so that AT&T and other companies will come in and try to make sure that their future is secured.
And I guess the argument is that we get benefits because you can go online and use Google to search, and even though you're only getting 20% of the book, you are getting more of the book than you did before. So in that sense, people find it problematic, but still partially beneficial.
That's why you continue to go to school.
Okay, I mean, that's a strange way to start because today we were going to talk about selfies and digital media, but it strikes me that one of the important things to note about the digital universe or virtual reality or social media is there's a very material basis to this. I know Google's presumably out there in the ether somewhere, but it's obvious that they also have the material control over the actual digital copies, even though the hard copy of the book is somewhere else. And it seems to me that the same thing will be true when we talk about other social media, whether it's the phone or whether it's a laptop or whether it's an iPad. There's a technology that's involved, and somebody has to own that technology. Although we may use it freely, that free use of that has some limits, and those limits are often commercial.
I know a good connection to get us to selfies because it does start here. It starts with that interest of media in the public interest, and that is that the creation of platforms forecloses possibilities. That's the material part of it that you're discussing. It gets us not thinking about the alternatives. So what does the cultural uptake of selfies do? And this is where my feminist inclinings come in. Women have always been shamed for portraying themselves, right? For makeup, wearing makeup. Why are you wearing makeup? You know, that's frivolous. And women continue to be shamed for taking pictures of themselves as selfies. And however, a lot of people are liking this practice. It's become a part of everyday life. And so while that is a practice that has been attempted to be shaped by corporate interests, let's just say, even cities try to run selfie contests to get people involved, it's something where people are socially making the rules by doing it.
We're gonna have to talk about this more.
Sure.
Because you've unearthed many things. The question for me, and I'll let you think about this, is
Fantastic.
To what extent is selfie and me controlling the selfie, or you or some young woman controlling the selfie, not actually participating in something that's self-indulgent, and although it may be expressive, it doesn't change our relationship to the technology, nor to the media, nor to an actual community use of that communication practice. But I'm going to say hold that thought. I see you're ready to jump at it, but we're going to take a little short break here. This is the Calumet Roundtable. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Calumet Roundtable, your student-produced Purdue Calumet show where we interview scholars and researchers from the area. Today my guest is Dr. Eve Bottando, master's student from Purdue Calumet and got her PhD at University of Iowa. We're talking broadly about social media, and we've moved from Google to selfies, which involves a cell phone. I guess what I was saying before to break, the problem that I would have in understanding selfies as a political statement, although I understand your position that women have always been shamed or challenged in their own presentation of themselves. It strikes me when you're talking about hegemony and the consent we give for commercialization is that despite the wonderful potential of being able to connect to people from one place to the other. When I go to the public library in my town, or when I watch people with their phones, most of it is for entertainment purposes. Most of it is for something that's all about me. And as much as I think it's good that I can control my own visage, and at a certain point that becomes almost self-indulgent, and it allows AT&T and Google to battle over who's going to sell which cell phone and who has the longest selfie stick. But for the life of me, I can't understand how taking selfies is a political statement, unless I'm taking a selfie at a demonstration for Israel out of Palestine like they did yesterday. But just a selfie to show me in the best light seems a little bit artificial as a way of being human.
Well, I would say that most of being human is a performance. RuPaul said that we wake up in the morning and the rest, everything else we do is drag. This sweater that you've put on today from a costumer to make sure that you look good in front of the black background. The way you address yourself in class. Are you Dr. Lee or are you Dr. Artz? These are performance aspects of how we live our everyday lives. The selfie is one space where crowds, where people begin to construct the aesthetics of that. Now,
but aesthetics doesn't feed people. Aesthetics doesn't stop the inequality that exists on the street. How RuPaul dresses doesn't keep him from getting beat up on the street. And to retreat into the selfie and to create an environment where everybody's sharing my selfie does not change the larger society in which I live. I could imagine selfies could do that, but it would require a political project. It would require somebody that recognizes there's more to the world than me. And how I act and perform in it is largely framed by how I've been raised, my social position, and the extent of which I can break out of that.
well, I would say that the practice of producing selfies actually helps interconnect other people outside of what the platforms design. In fact, some of the worst selfie campaigns are constructed by PR firms looking to get people to participate in some department store's project. There is a Tumblr website called Your Selfie is Stupid that critiques this probably from an anonymous insider inside the PR industry. And it is true that taking selfies is not going to solve world hunger. However, the process with which people construct their own rules to visualize themselves, that's the important space. That does impact everyday life at the cultural level. But it's not going to solve the problems of lack of library funding. It's not going to solve the problems of police brutality and the need for community awareness and community togetherness. This is where another project that I'm working on comes in. Recently, I applied with a group of people from throughout the city of Gary to construct a project using oral history, which is the process of people telling their stories about history in a community, to teach youth a concept called digital media literacy. So we have the cell phone, we have all this.
This is the Knight grant that you received, the Legacy, was it the Legacy Foundation of Knight Research that you received the grant for? Is that
Yes,
right?
so
Yeah,
Knight
okay.
Foundation provides the funding for us to do workshops with at-risk youth. We're going for 200 unique, individuals here to make sure they get a digital portfolio. Because one of the possibilities that becomes enclosed when you become this prosumer, right? This producer who is producing selfies within the consumer environment is that people don't always think about all the different things they could be doing with that. And that's where media literacy comes in. That's where using public resources like our public universities, like our libraries, to help bring people together and have them enjoy, do something fun, and contribute to history, right? Through oral history or some other project, helps youth envision other ways to do things than the ways that you are very concerned about.
Well, and I would argue that they're very concerned about if they took the time to stop and recognize it, and sometimes even when they don't reflect on it, it becomes kind of almost on an unconscious understanding. If I live in the city of Gary, there's without making a list, without going to media and culture class with you or with me, students in general know about police brutality, they know about inequality, they know about the collapsing infrastructure, they know about unemployment, they know about pollution. They can recognize all those things. I would say the project you're working on does more than the selfie, though. The project you're working on may use the same technology, but the project that you're working on, it sounds like it's providing an opportunity for a collaborative discussion or a group discussion among youth. And if it's an oral history, it must be somebody who's lived a little bit longer than the youth.
Yes.
So there's some reflection on their history. And that I can applaud. That I would say challenges AT&T and Google and the selfie that's just showing that I was here with at the last concert, but actually using the technology to open the conversation in a much more, participatory manner.
Let me step in here, because I love that phrase. My question, it's a rhetorical question, please don't answer.
I won't answer.
How do you open the conversation? How do you want to open the conversation? And if you have a large group of people who have grown up with technology and have felt good about themselves because they can take their own pictures of themselves, post it online, and feel their look, do you want to speak at them or do you want to speak with them? And so that's why I also revised my mass communication and culture course to be selfies, mass communication, and culture. My idea is that to get you to think critically about media is to meet you where you are.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I have no interest in telling someone right off the bat, your selfie is contributing to a self-indulgent world. That's not persuasive. And in fact, it mostly isn't true. Like by empirical research, by numbers, by looking at the polls, some psychologists are trying to make a lot of money off of claiming it's narcissism, but it hasn't been proved out by empirical research. So while we're still having the discussion, I'm going to meet students where they are. I'm going to meet the youth where they are. When I'm going to talk about digital media literacy to contribute to community programming, which doesn't do the same thing as taking a selfie at a concert, I'm not going to hold it in my mind to start the conversation for shaming them to take that selfie. Unless, of course, their clothing is really bad, then I'll have to talk to them about that. But then again,
I don't think any education starts with shaming, but I also don't think any education leaves people where they are. The task of moving forward is start where people are. I mean, in the past, I've used comic books or cartoons or action movies and enjoy those, or even Disney for that matter. Understanding where people are, but just to celebrate where we are, which is what most of American cultural studies does,
Sure.
which is to celebrate where we are as opposed to say, okay, this is what you've done. We understand this. What can we do with this that gives you more creativity, more power, more opportunity to be human, as opposed to just this? Certainly there's a way to say that, but I would think that we would be remiss if we left it at that level to celebrate what is basically the result of a commercial culture that can live with all kinds of critiques as long as they're constrained within that commercial culture, which is largely entertainment for entertainment's sake. I mean, I think we should be able to laugh, we should be able to cry, we should be able to, raise our voices, but we always should collectively, not just me, not just you, not just the person with the camera, but to be able to be in a conversation that says, why are we doing this? What are we accomplishing with what we're doing with this? Even if we're enjoying this, is that sufficient? Is there another way to enjoy being human? Is there another way for more people to enjoy it with us? All of those things, I think, have to be on the table. And I think your project gives the opportunity to do that. So it takes the selfie and moves it way beyond the self to, I don't know, not groupies, probably not a good word. But.
This goes back to why we began with the Google Books discussion, because it all goes back to what is in the public interest. For a period of time, women not being able to vote, women being property was defined as being in the public interest. And so I understand that those terms are problematic, but I also understand that there are institutions that have at their core a value of contributing to the community. They may not do that, but it's there. The university, for example. Universities are embedded in communities. They can be a potential place for change if they honor their commitment to the public interest.
Yes.
Libraries, but they're being disempowered by cuts in funding. So in the meantime, I try to find whatever persuasive means are available. One could argue that the Knight Foundation doesn't have a great history. I mean, they were around, I think, during yellow journalism, right? They've made their money off of taking advantage of the public at some point, and I'm taking this money to help people. It seems very strange. It's the way the world works, though. I accept absurdism at some point, right? The Dadaist movement had a point in that the world is a bit odd, and we have to find whatever space we can to make change. I think that American cultural studies, which is a particular interpretation of media and life and how we construct culture, many of the main people in that movement, if you look at their literature right now, are writing about literacy, because I think they're learning that this is where they have to go to make change.
We're reaching the end. So we'll have to have this conversation again. I would just say the main thing that I recognize about American cultural studies is its failure to recognize power and its attempt to celebrate culture without any grounding, without any material existence. And you end up like Carrie Nelson, one of the leaders of American cultural studies, supporting the University of Illinois' firing of Salida because Salida spoke out against Israel's attack in Palestine. And to me, that's the result of just having negotiation and seeing, I agree with you, it's an absurd world, but we can make sense of it and we can change that absurdity so we can enjoy it and make a world where we can all take collective selfies of us all being fat and happy.
Can we take a selfie?
Maybe we can get a selfie squeezed in. Please do. Take a selfie as we get squeezed in. But that's all the time we have on our program. Thank you, Eve. Oh, we're both there. Thank you for joining me today on Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Lee Artz. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you.